Hello and welcome to episode 105 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is August 20th, 2018. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both of McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/105, where you'll find links to ways to subscribe to the podcast and our email newsletter, as well as finding us on social media, and a way to check out libertymugs.com. And if you notice there, we're not showing prices in Bitcoin anymore. And that's not because we don't accept Bitcoin. We sure do. And we encourage you to pay us that way. But we changed payment processors, and we have a much better way of doing it now. And so that plugin doesn't change the price for us automatically. So I'll try to figure out how to do that manually. But in the meantime, I threw up one of those big Bitcoin accepted here pictures on the sidebar, so it should be obvious, but just in case you were wondering. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy Jones 2, and we're going to try attempt number 2 of this episode because I just stopped it. I don't know if that was in your head. You're like, this is the best I've ever done, and then I just go, I don't like it. Let's start over.
I was thinking that was an all-star performance. It was going to go into the McFlugel Hall of Fame, how good I was on that. And I think that's the real reason why you stopped it.
Just introduce the episode.
Thank you, Rollo. I'm Slappy Jones. That was Rollo McFlugel. It's the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today we're going to talk about how fun libertarians are parties. Sarcastically. I think we've all gone through this. Certainly I have. Back in the day, I was a neocon, and I thought I was right back then, and I was very passionate about my opinions, and of course, I regret a lot of that today. But at the time, I thought I was right, and the way I got to this was through reading, through arguing, debating with people, and I came around to this side. But that was a long process, and along the way, I probably annoyed a lot of people. As I started to learn these things, as I started to find out the things I always just assumed were correct, assumed were true, that the government was here to help you, that voting was great, that voting puts your representative in, and it's your civic duty, and you find out that's all lies. Kind of turns your world upside down. And at least for me, there was a little bit of anger for sure. And I wanted to tell everyone about it. Like, hey, look at this. It's all fake. All this stuff you always thought it's fake. Here it is. And then it's not well received, believe it or not. And then that makes you even a little more angry because, or angrier is the correct term there, because people aren't hearing these things that you think are so interesting and eye-opening. And you stop getting invited to parties. But people just know when you come around, it's like, all right, don't say anything about George Bush. Don't say anything about Barack Obama, because you know where it's going. You're so out of the mainstream, you're radical, that it's not going to be well received, and that should be expected. But anyway, Rollo, I want to send it back over to you because you have always had the reputation of being the hit of the party. How's your experience been on that?
I don't know what parties you're getting invited to. Since when do libertarians get invited anywhere?
True. Well, I have to pretend. Other people are listening to this.
Yeah, we got to put on that act.
Yeah.
No, it's. I think it's something a lot of us go through. Especially, it's the movement tends to have a lot of young people, and when you're young, you tend to be a little more aggressive, or
trying to find your way in the world.
Right, and part of it is you're excited about it, and you want other people to know, but you kind of realize, I've noticed looking back, there's a lot of times I'll be talking someone's ear off, and they'll just kind of be like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, man, not right.
Yeah, most people don't think about this. We're the weird ones, because we're thinking about stuff that 99.9% of people have no reason to think about.
They just accept it, and they should. Right. That's the world they grew up in.
And it's not. And I know a lot of libertarians like to think that statists are stupid or something, but it's not because they're stupid. It's just they're ignorant about it, and probably for good reason. It's Brian Kaplan's got the the irrational voter, what he talks about, where they're irrational, but for good reason, because
they're rationally irrational.
Yeah, they kind of in the back of their head, they probably don't realize it explicitly, but spending a lot of time learning about politics and all that stuff, it doesn't make sense to do that because your vote doesn't really matter at all.
Well,
so
I thought Kaplan did a pretty good. He had a talk, or it was in his book. I can't remember which, where he says he'll be in front of a room of people who want to go see him talk. So he says it's a room full of nerds, people who are politically engaged, and he'll say something like, "Who is your senator? Your U.S. senator? How many people know who their senators are?" And most of the room raises their hand. And then I'll say, who's your representative? And less people raise their hand. And then who's your state senator? Who's your state rep? Whatever. It goes down the line. And as he goes down, gets more local, less hands go up. But even when hands do go up, he'll say, okay, and what was their last vote? And nobody knows that. And he says, it's irrational to know that. It's irrational to follow this and to know what they're all doing because your vote is insignificant. And you know that whether you believe it or not. And the proof is that you don't know what they're doing anyway.
Yeah, and a lot of people would like to resist that idea because no, I care, I know, but the proof is in the pudding. You can ask them about this stuff, and they don't know. And
yeah, one of the things I like to do around election time is people ask me who I'm voting for. I tell them I don't vote unless you annoy me enough. Then I'll vote for the opposite person that you're voting for, so it cancels out your vote. And I haven't voted in a long time, but the funny thing is my vote counts as much as that person who's passionate and cares.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Right. But that's a side point to where we were going.
Yeah. I think I had like 4 other points I wanted to make, but I forget all of them.
Good.
So,
great show, man. We'll catch you next week.
Yeah. But that just means I'm going to jump over to another point, which actually, since I started talking, I kind of forget what that... now I remember. So we're trying to talk to all these people, and most people just don't care. And a lot of times, libertarian, someone will say something to you, and you end up having to, because maybe they'll ask a question, and eventually it'll just be like, well, what do you not want police? And you're kind of like, well, it's not that I don't want police, but it should be like privatized police, and that turns into like, what? You're crazy.
Yeah, well, it's not so. Yeah. Go ahead.
And so it turns into this whole thing, and it's kind of crazy stuff for people to hear that they've never heard before, because there's no reason for them to not accept that this is the way it is and this is the way it always will be. Because it's just that's what the world that they live in. They've got
that's
not
what
much of a
culture
reason.
is.
Yeah, they've got not much. They don't have much of a reason to ever question it. So, if after a 10-minute conversation about this kind of stuff and someone says, I don't think I said this in this episode. I think it was from before. So hopefully I'm not saying the same exact thing I said 4 minutes ago. But, if you have a conversation with someone and then like 10 minutes later they go, you know what? I completely agree with you. I'm an anarcho-capitalist or a voluntarist just like you after I was just a social democrat. That's probably not good. So it's one of those things where it just takes a lot of time for someone to transition out of their normal status paradigm and into something else that's just completely different. Because we're the weirdos. We're the ones that think about this. When there's no reason, like just existing in this world, there's not much of a reason to like think about it and question it. Not that you shouldn't. You should question everything. Because it leads you to stuff like libertarianism, but most people don't. So how important, how fruitful do you think that conversation is with trying to get, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring about a libertarian society. We're trying to get rid of the state. So do you think that talking to people is good? A good way of doing it?
I was going to say, yeah, I think it's great to talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think it changes people's minds? Let me put it that way. You put it. Last up. I wish we could just Frankenstein the two episodes together.
Yeah.
You framed this question a lot better than I just did.
No, no. So I know where you're going but so I think in my own life, and Rollo and I live relatively near each other, close enough to hang out every now and then. We have a common group of friends, and in that group, I think we've done a pretty good job talking to people, opening their mind, either getting them to come all the way or pretty close, at least changing the way they think about things they always thought they knew. And I think of my own life, and that's really a big part of how I got. It's not the only way. Started with reading some books. It actually started with me wanting to be a really good Republican. And so I wanted to really know economics well, and that took me down a path. But the conversation was necessary. Had I not had those conversations, who knows? You can't. I have no idea where I'd be, and that's me personally. I think it's very good and important to talk about these ideas to as many people as you can. But is it efficient?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, like you just mentioned earlier, if you talk to someone and say, it's not that we, I don't think we need police. I think we need security, and I think we need to be safe and be able to interact with people without the fear of being attacked, and start explaining ways, and people go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And you know what? You don't even have to tell me about the roads. I already figured out how we could build them. That person's rare, put it that way, if they really get it in one conversation, because these are radical ideas. They're things people haven't heard before, and they're scary. So the conversation is, you have to commit time and a lot of discussion on things that you've already figured out in your head. So you need patience, because one of the things we say is the people you're talking to typically aren't dumb. They just don't know, but they think they know, because everyone has an ego at some level. Rollo and I think our friends we went to high school with, I don't think they'd describe us as having a huge ego. We're pretty, humble people, more introverted.
Except we named the podcast after ourselves.
And exactly, that's where I was going. So we do, even us who most people would probably describe us as being humble and being polite, respectable. We certainly have an ego. We record this every single week and put it out there for people to listen to us talk. So, and everyone has that at some level, and everyone thinks they're right. And so when you have the conversation, it's finding out what they're passionate about, and being better at it than they are, which is one of the great things about libertarianism. I don't know if you want to explore that a little bit before.
Well, yeah, there's one thing I want to say about that, and especially as it relates to talking to your friends about it. There's a reason that they are your friends, hopefully. And hopefully if someone's your friend, or if you're someone's friend.
You have enough money to pay them every week.
Yeah, well, isn't that how everyone does it?
Yeah, that's how everyone has friends.
Yeah. But they probably respect you
for something.
Right. And that they probably don't think that you're an idiot or evil. And if they did, that you're probably not really going to be your friend. Or at least won't have certain conversations with you. Won't even really entertain the conversation. Because there's people everyone knows that they're just not someone you want to get into a political discussion with, because they don't have much to offer. But if you've got a friend that's going to sit there and have a discussion with you, it probably means that they think that you're not a jerk. They think that you're not an idiot. And while they might not agree with you, they at least have enough respect for you to be like, well, I wonder what there is to this if Slappy thinks these ideas. There's got to be, maybe there's something there. Or at least let me listen to him, because I think he's a decently smart guy otherwise, and not an idiot. So let me at least hear it out. And it might be in the beginning. They're going to ask a lot of questions. They're going to not agree at all. But over time, I mean, I've noticed that a lot of my friends will
start opening up over time a little bit.
Right. And they'll come out and ask for your opinion on something.
Right.
Because they'll start getting it slowly. But there's been times, I had a friend from work that I would talk to him about this. We'd have conversations, and I don't think he would call himself a libertarian, but I think he absolutely is. And actually fairly close to probably being a NANCAP too at this point. But although I don't think he would ever admit it. But that's fine. But I remember he asked me one time, because a lot of people at work would, give me a little bit of a hard time. A lot of it joking around about being an ANCAP and stuff. And he asked me, like, well, what do you think about drunk driving? And I said, like, oh, well, yeah, just no victim, no crime. So, yeah, go out and drink and drive and everything. And he goes, well, I was kind of hoping that you'd actually answer the question for real. And I was like, oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you were just, goofing off with me. And so I explained it to him, and he's like, oh, okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. Because what I said was that, all right, well, you got to frame this society correctly. It's not just, should it be illegal to drink and drive? It's, the roads would be private, and no one would want drunk drivers on the road. So it would be against the rules by the road owner for their own business sake, and then also the rest of the drivers out there don't want to be dealing with drunk drivers. So it would sort itself out that way. And so people start thinking these ideas in their head, but it might be crazy, seemingly crazy as you go, especially for someone kind of newer to it. We're so used to thinking these ideas through that it doesn't affect us when we say, like, hey, do away with this huge part of government. But for these people, it's more difficult, and they probably thinking, like, man, I must be, like, out of left field thinking this. So when you say it, and you say it confidently, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I was kind of thinking that. So it's very good to be that sort of person to someone that that you're there when you spread libertarianism through your words and writing and everything. This is kind of the main point, the very roundabout thing I was getting to, this final point here, is that you have to build up a certain amount of trust with someone. Because when you're presenting these ideas that are so radical and out there, and I'm saying this as someone who has a podcast and a blog, that random people aren't going to go on your site and say, oh, this guy Rollo McFlugel that I never heard of, that's got a goofy name for his website, and he's saying that we don't need the state to protect us from eating bad food. Wow, I absolutely agree with him, even though that I'm a social democrat or something. You need to build up a certain amount of trust. You need to build up a reputation that you're not saying ridiculous stuff. You're not being an idiot. So that's why there are certain, like a Tom Woods or something. He's got a huge audience, and he's got a lot of pull. It's because, and he doesn't just have people who are completely agree with him. He's got a lot of people that are kind of I think he's got a lot of like Republican leaning like that kind of conservative, not quite libertarian crowd, but they respect him and they think he's not an idiot. It's not because they know him personally, but they've seen enough of his stuff, and they've probably read things that are more a little bit more palatable for the mainstream, that they say, oh, hey, I really like this guy. Or maybe they hear him on another podcast, or maybe they hear him on a talk, and so they listen to him there. And then since they like what he says, they follow him otherwise, and then they start hearing this other stuff. And then I'm sure there's some people that are going to turn around and say, oh, I thought you were going to be good, but you're actually an idiot. But I think there's also going to be a good amount of people that say, okay, well, I mean, I think he's clearly a good guy, smart guy. Let me hear what he says. And then that's kind of like what plants a seed, or it kind of lets the bait out there that they start to chase. So, we all have visions. Anyone who's got a podcast or a blog, we've all got visions of grandeur that it's going to be the biggest thing in the world, and you should aim.
And it is.
Yeah. Oh, we are the biggest blog and podcast, and not just in libertarian circles, just flat out. We are not. Just look it up. Just look up number one podcast.
It's listed. If you look it up at mcflugel.com, you'll see it.
And if your search result pulls up anything other than us, then that's just proof that the government is controlling information.
That's correct. And
if you look at like Facebook and Twitter are just dominating your mind, and you're probably typing in the wrong words, but you're so diluted by the state that you can't even read what you're typing or know what you're typing. So it's not our fault. But yeah, so it's because that's what, when we write a lot, especially early on, we had a lot of our friends, the friends we were just talking about, were kind of reading what we were doing. And that's how I think you were the same way too, Slappy. I wrote with our friends in mind.
Them in mind, yeah.
Like, that's who I was writing to. And so I think that's an effective way of doing it, because instead of just trying to appeal to like everyone and get everything all at once, it's you got to build it up slowly. And so what's good is that we're not just, I mean, we could just write this stuff and send it to our friends and be effective, very effective that way with them, but we might as well let everyone see it.
Right.
And so the benefit of that is when we start, you start making connections, you start networking out there, that even if you're not reaching new people, I think it's very important to preach to the choir. And I think was it Bob Murphy gave this talk? I was at a Liberty Fest one time, and I think it was him gave the talk about the importance of preaching to the choir, because that ends up being a lot of what this is. I mean, for the most part, I mean, a libertarian podcast, it's vast majority of listeners are other libertarians that already agree. But the value, the benefit of that is that you're going to pick up on stuff, a different way of thinking about something, a different way of arguing something that you never thought of before. And so that gives you better ammunition, better ways of attacking that argument when you're talking to someone else. And when we're all networking and doing these things and interacting with each other, we're all learning from each other and able to expand our repertoires and become better at presenting our cases. So that's why, like...
And calling each other communists and idiots.
Yes. So that's why, even though that you're kind of like main focus on changing minds, especially for the smaller people out there, not us, of course, but, maybe have a narrow focus, but still like spread it out everywhere. Also, just because you might have a drive-by, someone who's just like kind of stumbles upon it and sees it.
Which has happened.
Oh yeah. So that's good. But so it's like, it's kind of like when I first started talking, it sounds and saying this like, don't really try to cast with a big net. It's like, yeah, don't, but also do that. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Great advice.
Yeah. Do this, but don't do it.
Yeah, like what I was going to say is we all have, well, maybe not, but I know I have some Democrat friends. Yeah, I know. But one way to get to them, and it's funny because I'm thinking of some in particular.
Camp it.
Number one. But how I became a libertarian was talking to these people and getting fired up and then reading so that I could really smash them the next time we talk. And these are my friends, But as I become libertarian, it's easier to talk to them because I found where I was wrong, and I can find where they are correct, or at least on the way to being correct, and I can beat them on their own issue, which is advice from Scott Horton. He says it all the time: outright the right and out left the left. And one of those examples, a real life example that I use all the time with Democrats, is getting to talk about the Fed, which of course, if you just say "end the Fed," they roll their eyes. But when you talk about big business controlling government and being in the pockets of government, and business writing the laws, and then you can talk about how that money gets to Wall Street, and there's ways to spin it that way to where they go, yeah, okay, no, that makes a little sense. because a lot of Democrats, at least their gut reaction is to be anti-Wall Street. So you can very easily work the Fed into that conversation, and then you kind of build a better rapport with them. At least they think, oh, wow, not only is he making my argument better, but maybe I should listen to him a little more. And then when you talk about the other things about the welfare, they probably don't agree with you, at least not right away, but they're more open to listening to you because you are so good on the issue they care about. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about, and how we can kind of transition into the second part of this conversation is having discussions efficient? Is it good? Is it a way to change people and change society and how they think and how they look at government and eventually get rid of government? Probably not. The way to do it, I think, is through agorism. You can do it by people not even realizing it, because the reality is when you talk to most people, they're all in their own head in some twisted way. They're all minarchists. They don't want government doing things that they know they can do on their own. They don't want government telling them what TV stations they can watch, what they have to eat for dinner. Those are things they think they can handle. Most people, an overwhelming majority of people, at least in my experience, maybe that's anecdotally, but I think it's probably true, want government to do the things they think the market can't handle. And so if we can show them a way the market can handle it, then they don't need government anymore. And one of the ways to do that is to actually go out and do things, but talk about the ways we could do it. And you'll see the state start to wither away as the market handles the thing people previously thought only government could do.
Yeah. Like plowing fields. All you need to do is go out and get a tractor and plow, and anyone can do it, and we'll have anarchy. And
that will stop all these people who are saying we need the government to plow fields.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the conversation I have the most with people. They say, who's going to plow the fields?
Right. The roads, like, they get the roads, but it's who will plow.
Oh, yeah. The roads are easy for everybody.
Right.
No, yeah, I agree. And it's when the thing is to get them to get that taste of what the market provides. And so
see
things
the possibilities.
So things like Uber, and this is why like Uber and Lyft and Airbnb are so incredible, I think, is because they just took something that the government had the monopoly on in some way. I mean, with Uber and Lyft especially, the government gave the taxi licenses out. And Uber, and they just, without asking for permission, they just went and did their own thing, and they made it better. And now no one takes taxis anymore. And it's all Uber and Lyft. And that you don't have to be a libertarian to take those. And now I know there's people saying, oh, it should be regulated and everything. But the idea that it should be taken away or that it should be changed that much, most people love those services and don't want them changed. And they're going to change. I mean, the market's going to drive change in them, but for the most part, people are thrilled with it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone away from using taxis. I mean,
well, it's funny. How old is Airbnb? Do you know?
Not that old, because
I don't know.
A friend. It was a little bit after I graduated college, I think, because a friend of mine and I actually started working on a project that was similar, basically the same idea as Airbnb. We set up a little like workspace online and started trying to work out the ideas on how to do that. It was more like a couch surfing platform where you would be like find someone else in another city or something that you wanted to visit, and you find someone that wanted to visit your city, and then you like went to each other's place and like was their tour guide.
Nice.
And then he got hooked up in a startup and moved to Chicago and has been extremely successful. So,
well, what I was going to say with that is I remember years ago. So it was either before Airbnb was around or before it was popular. someone arguing with me about why we need government to regulate hotels and give licenses, because if you're traveling in some area that you don't know, anyone could throw up a hotel sign, and that guy could be a psycho killer. And how would you know? Because you're not from that area. You don't know the reputation. And then, I talked about branding, and that's why there are that's why when you travel to pretty much anywhere, you can find a Hampton Inn or a Holiday Inn or something, because, that brand, the room will be generally clean. It's not going to be a 5-star, but you'll be able to stay there because Hampton Inn has a reputation and all that. And at the time, I wasn't even thinking of the possibility of Airbnb. But then Airbnb came around, and now people don't really question that. They're staying in people's homes, and it's working really well.
Oh, and yeah. I mean, that's a huge, not a huge, but now a not insignificant part of the economy is kind of this, like the peer-to-peer kind of thing. Like that, right. Like Uber and Airbnb, and even there's like food services too.
There's car wash services. You can have someone come wash your car while you're at work. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
Yep. And so that's the great thing, is that these are market improvements, things that no one's asking permission from the state to break through the licensing and everything. They find kind of a loophole, or they just flat out do it. And the state's so clumsy and big and slow that it can't always keep up. And so by the time that they kind of gain their bearings and try to do something about it, good luck trying to take Uber and Lyft away from people. It's not going to fly. They already have it. And they don't realize that is actually like anarchy in action.
Right.
But that's the greatest part of it, is that's what you want. You want people to change without even realizing they're doing it. Because if you walk up to someone and say, would you think that having people give taxi services people in a completely unlicensed way, or completely as in without the state, that would be productive and safe and good for everyone? They say, no, absolutely not. You need the government to make sure that, blah, 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 blah. Or, your hotel example was good. No, you need to make sure that it's safe and it's going to be clean and everything. Well, we can see that they'll say that, but it'll just happen, and they go along with it because they're being rational market actors, despite their their preference for or what they think is their preference for the state. Well, it is their preference, but when presented with a better alternative, they go for that. And so, yeah, I think that I agree that agorism, that kind of just creating technology, is the way that the state's going to become undone, because the market will always outstrip the state. And so it'll just start replacing services until it makes it obsolete. And so I think this is kind of the, what's it called? Leading up to this is like, what do you have an opinion on maybe what the best opportunity there is now for technology to just destroy the state?
I don't know. And the one hurdle that I can't get over is, how would we have money in a free society? Don't we need a Federal Reserve Bank?
Well, we could just use seashells.
That's an idea. I found a couple of them this past weekend. I was down at the shore.
I have some seashells that I brought up when I was in Florida late this winter. I took them back up here, and they're actually very nice. They're small. They're very uniform. I can put a lot in my pocket and have them.
There we go.
So yeah, this is our money.
Cool.
Problem
solved.
solved.
That problem.
Yep.
Any other ideas?
Let's see. Salt.
Salt.
That's easy, right?
Because gold's kind of heavy.
Yeah.
Or could be if you want to carry a lot of it around.
And you can't break it up very well. I mean, you got a gold coin, you're stuck with that. So if a gold coin's worth, I don't know, 3 cows.
Right.
And I only want 2 cows. We can't really make that trade.
Is there anything you could break up into like like 7 zeros and a 1?
Yeah. Oh, the Petro. The Petro.
There it is.
The cryptocurrency in Venezuela.
Yes. So that could be a solution.
Yeah. We should really analyze that and see if we can come up with the problems associated with it.
It's not a bad idea. I don't know a whole lot about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I don't know.
But what about that? What's the other one?
I don't know. Bitcoin
Bitcoin.
Oh, Bitcoin SV.
SV? No, not that one. Just straight up Bitcoin.
Bitcoin Diamond?
Yeah.
Or Bitcoin Gold, because that's what, we're talking about gold and money, so it must be that.
What happened to that, by the way?
I don't know why, but people still trade it.
Really?
Yeah, it's not worth much, but
it's not worth nothing.
It's still on like the kind of not that low.
Well, anyway, seriously though, how could Bitcoin solve some of these issues that we're having? And what kinds of problems could Bitcoin solve?
Well, it will help people retain and gain wealth. And I think that's kind of the big thing, is that currently with the monetary systems that we have now with central banking and federal reserves and all that, there are really no good options for the average person. You can't save your money. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. It forces you, and this is where you take this down and talk to your Democrat friends, but they force you into the stock market.
Yep.
Which is money going to Wall Street,
Yeah.
And you have no options. You can't put it under the mattress. You can't put it in a safe. It will be worth nothing.
And the stock market is a terrible, terrible place for the average person, because who's going to either, one, want to put in that time, or two, just have the time to really understand what they're putting their money into. They're just blindly throwing their money into something, and overall it'll probably go up.
You're paying a guy who you expect to be on top of that to do it for you.
Right.
Which is what a mutual fund is.
Mm-hmm. But you're just kind of blindly doing it, and it's dumb money. And that's not to say that people are stupid that are putting their, I have money in there, but it's dumb money. But that's kind of the best option, one of the better options we have right now if you're in that current system, to kind of, gain a little bit of appreciation on your wealth. I mean, hopefully, the market tends to crash every 7 to 10 years, and so it's not very good. Or if you keep it in a bank and you're gaining, the little bit of interest you'll get there, I mean, you're not even close to keeping up with inflation. I mean, you're not left with very good options to,
I will say this:
hold your wealth.
It's not terrible to pay someone to invest your money for you, like if that's what you want to do,
right?
But why do you have to?
Yeah, that's the problem. Is that if you don't do that, you're going to lose a lot of value, and so
yes, exactly.
And so part of that problem is that it's good to divide labor and everything, but when you're ignorant, you still probably should have some idea of what's going on. Otherwise, you're more likely to get scammed on it. So you're exposing people to a lot of scams. It was a couple of years ago. Remember that? I think it was a local story. The guy churning annuities.
Yep.
On those old women.
Yep.
I mean, they should never. At that point, you should just be able to stuff your money under a mattress.
Right.
When you're that old.
You're close to, or you're in retirement or close to retirement.
Yeah.
You should be able to have built up enough wealth to where you can retire without paying someone to outpace inflation for you. Yeah,
but because you can't do that, these couple of old women had to hire a guy, and then he was ended up scamming them. And it's the guy obviously shouldn't be doing that, but you've created there's a system that's been created that heavily incentivizes that, because if you don't do that, you're going to lose.
Yeah, a side point on churning annuities is there's surrender charges in an annuity. If you get a 10-year annuity, it might have a 10-year surrender charge, but it could have a 5-year surrender charge. But the guy who sells it gets paid up front. All the commission is front loaded. So if he makes a sale and he takes that money that's in the annuity every year and gets a new annuity from it, he gets paid again, and the person who's buying the annuity has to pay a surrender charge on surrendering that annuity. So that's why churning is scamming someone. They're losing money. It's not in their interest. And that person doesn't know what they're doing. They just go, yeah, okay, sure. You're the advisor. Go ahead.
Yep.
And so some of it's on them for sure. But why do they have to do that?
Yeah, it's because they're not going to keep up with inflation because the Federal Reserve has really easy money. And so
they try to their goal is to have a certain amount of inflation every year. That's part of why they exist.
Yeah, it's not even like they're hiding it. It's out in the open. They say that deflation is horrible and that would be terrible for an economy. So, I mean, talk to the average person and they'll say like, oh, no, you need to have some inflation. Inflation's good. Why?
Most people will say that, I think.
I mean, most people don't even understand what inflation. Most people think that inflation is that the price of a loaf of bread went up.
Yeah. But I mean, most people do believe that.
But no, most people think inflation. That. Right. And you ask them why, and they just, I don't know. But again, it's, maybe this actually does affect them a lot, so they probably should.
Yeah.
That's probably an example where they really should not be.
But it's what you learn in school.
Right.
It's what you learn everywhere. It's all around. Inflation is necessary.
Yep.
Like all those people who took their Econ 101 class and heard that, never looked at economics again, never questioned it, never thought anything. That's what they remember.
Yep. Yeah. So Bitcoin's an opportunity, like what we're talking about with Uber and Lyft, is that it doesn't ask for permission. And Bitcoin, it comes from the cypherpunks who were... I mean, that was their whole goal, was to figure out ways to, write code to basically destroy the government. And we're just going to write code and see what we can make of it. The more I learn about those guys and that movement, the more I really like it, the more I identify as that.
Right.
Because they're just...
Likewise.
Yeah, they're making the state obsolete by writing software. And we're in a time point in the world where software just solves so many problems in the world that it becomes a more and more powerful tool. So if Bitcoin does start, I think it already has been, if it serves as a better money as anything else, then according to Gresham's law, people are going to jump over to it. And, the U.S. dollars and other currencies that are put in place by governments, people aren't going to use them as much anymore, and they can't. As Bitcoin matures and everything, it's going to hopefully becomes more difficult to track, becomes more private. People get better. It becomes easier to use. So
easier to keep safe. Easier to do everything.
Right. So it's going to. It's not going to be very good for the government to try to still hold on to their old kind of slave keeping practices that they do now with us. They're going to have to make some sort of adjustment, which means probably do less, because they're just not going to have the power anymore.
And that's one thing. I think a lot of normies out there heard a lot about Bitcoin about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, when it was shooting through the roof, the price was. And then it came back down, all the way down to $6,000. And they kind of think it was a fad. But I believe it's still in its infancy. I think you're still early. If you've never bought Bitcoin and you buy now, it's still in its infancy, because it's going to keep improving, keep getting stronger. And as soon as people start accepting it more and it being used more and traded more, it could be the way of the future.
Yeah, so right now it's kind of in its low, which it was like before, and I kick myself now for when it first went up to $1,200 and then it dropped down. That's when I started paying attention, but then it just like stayed at a couple $100, and there wasn't much
for a while.
It wasn't very exciting, and I kind of just didn't really think about it or care about it as much. And then when it popped back up, everyone's going nuts. So I implore people out there to take this opportunity of this lull, that is much less of a lull than it was last time around, but take this opportunity to learn everything you can about Bitcoin and learn it cold, so that when it comes back up and it becomes more popular, you can be the person that is the point that your family and friends and people that come to you to be like, oh, I got to understand what's going on here. let me learn from this guy, because it would be a tremendous help to those people to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes that maybe I or you made in the past, especially with, not buying on exchanges where they, keep all your information on a database that can be hacked. It's I think it would pay, the learning that you do now will pay huge dividends for you later. And not just the dividend of helping people, like you probably will somehow be more profitable in it too, if you know how to use it well and understand how it works. Because like you said, I agree. I forget who said it, but they compared it to being like Bitcoin right now is like the internet was in like 1982. It's so like, it's not even close to being,
so it's full potential.
Right. Not even close to being on a scale where it could be money. But the Lightning Network is chugging along. And, assuming that works, which it's looking extremely promising. The potential for Bitcoin is just almost unfathomable. And I know, this stuff happens. The Bitcoin world is flying along so quickly that there's a tendency to be impatient for it and be like, man, I've been waiting, when's it going to come out? When's it going to come out? But I think
it's got to be done right.
Yeah, I think it's better to be a little bit conservative with this and make sure everything's good, because this might be our one shot at really taking a bite out of the state, if not completely obliterating it with Bitcoin. So let's try to...
It's going to be hard to fight a war if Bitcoin's the currency.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of what I had.
Yeah.
I think this is a lot better than what we were recording earlier.
Our previous.
Yeah, every time we try to do like a straight social thing, like
just tough.
Social commentary. Yeah, it's not. There's other people do it really, really well. Just not my wheelhouse at all. Which is fine. Divide labor. I'm happy, because also I just get bored hearing about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that other people can carry that torch. We didn't talk about it, but do you have a free market success story?
Do you?
Not really.
Well, maybe. So I'm getting new gutters finally.
Oh yeah.
And called around to several places, had trouble getting even quotes from some people, even though they advertised free quotes. So of course I just didn't use them. And I got a couple quotes, and I got one that was really good. And so I'm going with that guy. It was way less than I budgeted for, way less than I expected. He came, he was very polite, rung the doorbell, told me he's out front, he's going to be walking around my house, doing some measurements, came back with a number, told me some of the neighbors who have used his service if I wanted to go see what their gutters look like, which I know some of them, and which is how I found this guy anyway. He does good work, and the price was really good, and so I'm going to go with him. If that's that's kind of a on-the-fly free market thing that I was thinking about buying recently. But why it works is I called several people trying to get someone to do it, and thankfully we have these options, because I found a guy. Now, he didn't do the work yet, so let's not... but I have seen his work, and I got recommendations from people I trust. But his price killed everyone, and his work is pretty good. God bless you.
Thank you. Well, if he's killing everyone, maybe it's not a good free market success story.
Why would that not be a success? He has no competition.
That's true.
So he's very successful in the free market by killing people.
Yep.
Killing them on price. And thankfully I have that option, because if it was somehow centrally planned, I'm paying whatever they tell me to pay, and there is no motivation for that person to provide a better service or to show his other work, because I have no options.
I don't like your aggressive language that you're using.
Sorry.
Speaking of not liking language that people are using, so the Friends Against Government podcast finally got the great Todd Hagopian on. And towards the end of their episode, they said, over the Rollo and Slappy show, and I was like getting excited. Wow, they're talking to Todd about us. So at the end of every episode, they do a free market success story. So I was like, man, imitation is the best form of what's that saying?
Flattery or something.
Yeah, so again, they're gonna use our thing to impress Todd. That's great. And then they say, well, that's stupid, and we're gonna how do we make the timeline weird?
Yeah.
So
they are a weird timeline.
Yeah. That was mean. And
it was offensive.
Yeah, I demand satisfaction. So we're calling you out. I think a lot of people were probably expecting Carr on again.
Why would they expect that?
I don't know. I'm not saying that they would want that or could stomach that. Just saying that,
They probably thought it was coming, huh?
Yeah. So.
Well, sorry, Carr.
Womp womp. And sorry about your cactus too. Hopefully you stop getting rain. Although after what you did to us with the free market success story, I hope all the rain we be getting up here goes down to you and ruins your cactus. Okay. Other podcasts our friends listen to, since we're talking about how it's good that that there's networking going on and we can all learn from each other. Mance Raider and the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. There's the aforementioned Friends Against Government podcast with Car Campett and Bird Archist. You've got Peaceful Treason podcast that is now kind of sponsored by Liberty Mugs. So make sure you listen for the Liberty Mugs when they do
about it.
It is. When they do their Cerveza of the week. And we have on Liberty Mugs, go to libertymugs.com and there's a Peaceful Treason section if you go click on the side, and we'll probably be adding some more stuff. But listen and support their show by buying stuff from us.
Yeah. That is supporting their show.
Yeah, it is. Jeremiah Harding, he's doing stuff all the time. He's got his morning news thing, and he's got like I think Wednesday and Sunday nights he's got some shows that he does too. And then last but not least, the Dino Files. The show notes page for this episode is mcflugel.com/105. Follow us on Twitter. Go and do us a favor. If you haven't subscribed to iTunes or Stitcher or one of the other podcatchers, do that. And if you have or you haven't done that, go leave us a review, please. Give us a rating and leave us a review. That helps us out a lot. It helps get reach, helps us show up in the search thing in the related field. So we would very much appreciate that. And as the Friends Against Government podcast would say, make that timeline weird. Get creative. So
and look at our other reviews. There's some weird ones.
Yeah. Speaking of leaving comments, we had a recent comment on when we post these episodes on YouTube as well. And one of the episodes about Jordan Peterson, someone commented us said you guys are like 14-year-old and smoke weed in your basement. You're gonna look back and see how stupid you guys are. And I said, okay, cool. I said, well, how about you come on the podcast and debate any points you have? Hoping that would call his bluff. And he apparently wasn't bluffing, so he said, okay. But he's yet to respond. I said, shoot me an email, and he hasn't done it yet. So if you're out there, whatever your name is,
come on.
Yeah.
We'd love to talk to you.
We'd be more than happy to have you on and flesh some ideas. Because I think that's fun.
It is fun.
Is having someone fire off some questions and we answer them. So. Or anybody else out there, if you think we're stupid. Call us. Go on YouTube, call us stupid, be a normal commenter on YouTube, call us stupid, and maybe we'll have you on the show. Is that how Carr did it? He just kept calling us stupid?
Yep. And then he's comes on the show every other week.
Yep. So see, it works.
Yep.
All right. Go to mcflugel.com, subscribe to the email newsletter, and you'll get a discount at libertymugs.com, and also just go to Liberty Mugs and buy a whole lot of mugs. Great for gifts for family and friends, especially if they're not libertarians, because then you'll get a kick out of it when they open it up. and they get it brainlet. All right. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we'll catch you.
Yeah.
Peace.